Awesome. Welcome to Back in the Game, Bouncing Back from Tragedy, group therapy, Heal from the Inside Out. My name is Timothy Law Sr., and this is my lovely wife, Josette Law. We're grateful for all you guys that are here with us today, and for those who are tuning in, we're very grateful for the opportunity to speak to a community of people. We're here today to talk to those individuals who've had to suffer tragedy. Those who've been through calamity and those who've been through very tough situations. So right now we're going to let our cast introduce themselves, and then we'll go forward from there.
Anthony Foster, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I'm representing my son Raphael Roland Foster, who transitioned in August of 2008.
Amy Lunsford from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. My husband Chris Swindle passed away 15 years ago.
My name is Irene Jemison from Sawyerville, Alabama. I'm here representing my husband, Samuel Jemison, who transitioned 7 years ago, March 2012.
I'm Karen Miles from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, here representing my son, Bo Miles, who transitioned in 2015.
Tiffany Miles, Tuscaloosa, Alabama, here representing my brother, Robert Williams Jr., who transitioned May of 1993.
And my name is TJ Smith. I'm here representing my brother, Galen Maurice Lee, who transitioned February 10th, 2009.
And we're here representing our son, Timothy Law Jr. He transitioned 5 years ago at the age of 8. And so thank you guys for coming out today. I think that this is a subject that needs to be talked about within the community. And so just talk to me about Ms. Miles, about tragedy, and what does it mean to you as it pertains to something that happened with your family, with your brother?
I was 12 years old when my brother died. He's 10 years older than me at the age of 22, and it was him and his girlfriend and her son that were murdered in Birmingham, Alabama. At 12, you're a child, and at that point in my life, I don't think I understood the significance of his death. But as I get older, we cross milestones in life. I had my children. I graduated from college. I preached my first sermon. He wasn't there for that. And just missing him for those life milestones, as I grow older, it becomes a little bit more difficult, and I have to deal with the grief in a different way than I did when I was 12.
So, Miss Irene, I know that we discussed several times about your husband and how much you love him dearly. So, you having to make transition now. So, how difficult has it been for you to have to try to move on to this next chapter in your life with your life partner that's no longer with you?
Well, as you said, my life partner, we've been together, been friends since 6th grade. So he's really been there with me for a long time. We was married for 31 years. We have the 2 children, and that kind of helps us to help me to help move forward now. But it is difficult because he was like the breadwinner of the house. So me having to transition, like I said, to actually be all the decision makers, because he made financial decisions. I assisted, but now all the decisions, all the household duties, inside, outside, all of that falls on me. So he's not there for me. If I need a question, he's not there. So sometimes, he worked out of town, but you always look for that door to open on Friday evenings when he came home, and that door doesn't open with him approaching in. So it's been difficult. Been 7 years, but sometimes it seemed like it was just yesterday. So.
And so I want to ask this question to my wife. I know that TJ was a bundle of joy. He was always very smart, very intelligent. So talk to the audience and to them about, as a mother, some of the things that you deal with and maybe currently dealing with, and that maybe can help a mother who's out there who's just walking into it, or who's been through it as well.
Well, one of the things that I really deal with are the milestones, like she was saying, the milestones in life. Wishing, like when school first starts, the first day of school, and hearing the school bus come out of house is one of the issues that I've had, over the years. And I think over the years, I've told myself every year that it's going to be better. But when that first day comes and hearing the school bus, it comes just like it just happened. And so that's one of the things that I go through transition and thinking about how old he would be, or seeing the kids that's his age as they transition from elementary to middle school, thinking about, oh man, would he have been this tall, or what size shoes he would have been wearing and stuff like that. So I say that it's a process. It's a process, and I have to continually, all the time, ask God, help me in the moment, help me in this process, because every year, I think I've actually listened to what other people may have said, like it's going to get better, and everybody say it's going to get better, but sometimes it's hard to even imagine that I got to continue to go through life not seeing him grow up from age to age. So
TJ, I know that you and your brother was real close, and obviously we knew him from playing basketball and stuff like that. So kind of talk about Galen and your situation, and your mom and your family, and how you had to be kind of the backbone at that time to help your mother and family kind of get through that situation.
Galen was murdered through a home invasion in 2009 in Huntsville, and since that time, it was challenging. It's been an eventful period throughout life, and as everyone have said, it's a transition. I can remember my mom as we were going to get my sister, because she lived in Huntsville with him. I can remember we're going to pick my sister up, but my brother has just been killed. And as the older sibling, I'm having to process my feelings, make sure my mom is fine, make sure my sister is fine, make sure my stepfather is fine, make sure my grandmother is fine. And I can remember the weight of the world on my shoulders through that process. And I can remember where I was when I had the thoughts of going back to work 2 days later, just to get my mind off of things that I wanted to transition myself. And I can remember the Lord speaking to me, and I can remember saying, you have to be strong for everyone else, and not understanding that my mom was going through this suicidal thoughts as well. And it kind of helped me through that process at that moment, because I had no idea I was actually living for my mom and my sister at the time, because my sister to this day hasn't talked about it. And we've gone on. I have a son, I have a daughter, and you're balancing your emotions for being strong for everyone. And I think that's one of the difficult part of my role, is because I'm having to be that person. Because Galen, he was never the type of person that will be vocal, but he was the type to be silent and sit back and just observe. And so we know that, but we also have to join in to understand, that's what Galen would just say, hey, y'all just pick up and move on, everything will be fine, I'm good. So that's the thing that sticks in my mind, that I know he'll say everything will be fine.
Yeah, in this book here, I talk about, as we're talking about, I talk about preseason conditioning, being conditioned for the season, dealing with an athlete, kind of preparing himself, getting ready for the game. And I think so many times in life, we have all these dreams and aspirations, and we never would expect in a million years that we would actually have to walk through something like this. we are people of faith. We read the word and we pray, and we just, we haven't expected in the way we think things are going to be. But life sometimes throws curveballs. Sometimes things happen unexpectedly. So I know, Miss Amy, we talked a little bit about your situation. So can we just kind of tell people about, your situation and how, it has affected you and your daughter, and so just talk about that a little bit.
I was 28 when I was widowed with 3 daughters, 8, 6, and 22 months. It was sudden. He flipped over on our 4-wheeler. And the way I had found out, I was down on the dirt road next to the police car, and they came over the radio and said no respiration, no pulse, no sign of life. That's how I found out he had died. And it was hard. It was hard for a long time. Of course, the kids keep you going. I could have just climbed in that casket with him. I mean, it was extremely hard. And it's every year on that day, I can remember that whole day just as it happened. From the time we got up that morning, everything. And, the last time I saw him alive, he turned around and smiled and winked at me and got on that 4-wheeler and left. And I can see it all, but just clear as day, 15 years later.
And so that's just a testament to, sometimes we don't really know how strong we are, until we have to actually walk through a tragedy, and so, even with some emotional things, sometimes you could be smiling, but people don't know what you are walking through. Like I said, emotional triggers we have certain days and things of that nature. So I know, Miss Karen, you had your son, and he has kids and stuff right now. So kind of just talk to us about the whole. I mean, I know it's difficult, but having to even you walk through it with your son, but at the same time being a grandmother, having to be able to share that love and that the compassion with them, and kind of even tell them about their father, even though they haven't been able to be with him,
Bo was 24 years old when he was killed, and for me, I think the most difficult part of it was he was a healthy child. There was nothing wrong, and I left going home to my hometown to my class reunion, and how they say you just have that feeling that you just know that something is wrong. And for me, my faith in God has kept me going through the whole thing. And even on my ride home, I told God it was nothing about me or anybody else. I just knew that it was my son. I said, God, whatever it is, Psalms 91 verse 11, give your angels charge over him to keep him in all his ways. And I got a strange text on that Sunday morning, and it was just out the ordinary. And, then I immediately knew that something was wrong. And for me, you spoke about the kids. His daughter was 4 at the time. She was 5, and his son was 2. And my biggest struggle has been, how do I keep his memory alive, in their life? Because now they have to move forward without their father. And so for me, I'm at a point right now where I don't think I've really dealt with his death, because I've had to be strong for everybody else. I have to keep going and keep pushing myself. So for the kids, it's a joy to see them, and it's so strange that, he has a daughter and a son, but the daughter is more like her father. She's really athletic. She can draw. He could draw, and it's just seeing those little things that come out in them. And his son, his statue is just like his father. He's pigeon-toed, he's flat-footed. That was my son, and every time I see him, I'm like, wow, there go my son again. And, they keep his memory going, but at the same time, it's kind of painful, because how do you leave a healthy child and come back to no child? Right. And, and how do you process explaining to them once they get older what happened to your father? And I also have a daughter. She is now 23. And, you know, we've never really just sat and talked about it because, you know, I can see the anger in her.
Wow.
She's not yet ready to deal with what really happened to her brother. And, you know, and everything is not Facebook worthy. You know, some things you have to remain silent on and allow God to deal with it. And so that's why, you know, a lot of times there are things that I want to say to her about her brother, but, you know, you just can't because you fear for her safety. And, you know, and I think for people that have lost kids in a tragedy, we have to allow ourselves to grieve.
Yes.
I have not given myself permission to do that. And for one, because, you know, I'm a nurse. I'm a registered nurse now. So from that standpoint, you know, nurses always think they can fix everything. I got to fix somebody else and not myself. But, you know, I had to deal with myself on a spiritual level. I had to rebuild my relationship with God because, you know, I felt like, God, I asked you to do one thing and you couldn't do it. Knowing that's the flesh speaking, not the spirit. And to allow myself to rebuild that relationship with God and know that no matter what happened to my son, God is still God.
Yes, he is.
Yes.
He still loves me, you know, and I think now my relationship is even stronger because I know that I can depend on him no matter what the situation is. Those days when I don't want to get out of the bed and I leave the blinds closed and people are calling, you know, you have to learn how to, for me, separate myself from people so that I don't seem so hostile or so mean about the situation. Because I know they mean well. He's in a better place. I get all that, but that's not where I am right now.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Right.
just let me be in the moment,
Right.
let me process it, and let me go through grief in my own way.
Right.
And so for me, you know, just trusting God in those silent moments when I just sit and, you know, I'm reading the word and I'm reflecting on God's word.
That's right.
Knowing that God said that, you know, whatever he say, I believe. I can stand on this word and just hold true to one day it's going to get better for me. And, you know, and just hoping that somebody would hear the story and realize that, you know, hey, I took a life. Somebody else is hurting. These are children that would never know their father. You know, and I think for me, just wondering, just praying, God, I hope he didn't suffer. You know, and then I had to learn too how to forgive myself for not being here in Tuscaloosa at the time that it happened.
Yes.
Feeling like, you know, I could have saved him more. And I know that that's not true. You know, whatever's going to happen in life is going to happen. And we are where we are, not by accident, but, you know, through the intent that this is where you need to be in life. And I'll never forget, one of my church members told me, she said, Miss Karen, I just believe Bo's death is bigger than him dying, that God has something greater.
Wow.
And so I'm looking forward to that and being able to minister to another mother, another father that's going through what I'm going through, and being able to lean on each other and know that, you know, hey, sister, I got your back.
Right.
You know, I feel your pain. I understand where you are. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to not want to, you know, interact with other people right now. But, you know, we can't stay there. We got to get back in the game. Like you said, we got to get back in the game because we still have to live. You know, I have to be grandmother for his kids. And, you know, I have to encourage them. So, you know, it's just awesome blessing to be able to even be a part of you and your wife. I'll never forget the day that we met and we had to do the interview. And I was changed in the middle of school to a different counselor. And it was you, and I saw you, and I was like, Lord, I hope it's not that young guy because I don't have time for this. You know, I just want to get through school, you know. And little did I know the connection that we would have. And you had the same plaque on your desk as I have that the same lady gave to me. And the question, I think it only got to question 2 or 3, and you asked me, how many kids do I have? And it's the little things that, as you say, you don't know how to process. I didn't know how to say I had 2 kids, but one was deceased. And that's when the whole interview stopped, and you just poured into me. You ministered to me. You know, you forgot about the interview, and you just focused on me. And I think as a group, when we're in that moment, that's what we need to do. Just focus on whatever that person is going through and letting them know, hey, you're not alone. And like you say, I think this community with the grief, people, they'll come before the funeral, they'll come the day of the funeral. Then there's the day after the funeral.
Yes.
And the next day.
Yes.
And the next week.
Yes.
And the next month. And the next year. Yes. We have to get to that point where we say, hey, sister, I haven't forgotten your pain. I'm here for you. So, I'm grateful for this opportunity to get to the point where I can start healing and start dealing with what I'm feeling.
Amen.
And so one of the most difficult things, I say my situation, thinking about legacy, TJ was the only boy. I got older daughters. So it was difficult because, I'm thinking about, a father always want to, the son carries the last name, so it was difficult for me in that place, so even grieving was difficult, I talk about in the book how as an athlete, you're trying to you don't show emotions, so by me playing sports all my life, basketball from 5 probably all the way up and then get into coaching, you don't show pain, you roll your ankle, you tie your shoes up tighter and you go back out there and you don't let your opponent know that you're weak. And so what happens as people of faith, and then when we try to bring our physical abilities over into our physical abilities over into our spiritual life. And so when we get into a spiritual situation where the Bible said when you're weak, that's when you're strong. I didn't know how to be weak. I didn't know how to grieve. I didn't know how to cry at the funeral. I was just so in this other place. I was like here but wasn't here. Just trying to get through it. Trying to get through the week, trying to get through the day, trying to get, just trying to have a strong front for my family. But I came to notice that because I wouldn't grieve, then it hindered my family from grieving. So I wouldn't cry, show emotion. So my wife and my daughters was just like, well, I can't grieve because daddy not, he's trying to be strong. But at the time, I don't know. I've always been taught, don't show emotions. But that is so unhealthy, as you said. I had to give myself permission to grieve. So Mr. Foster, I know your son was very precious to you and everything, and your family has really accomplished a lot of things. So talk about your son's transition and how your wife and how your kids, your son was a part of our basketball team when I was at Shelton State, and so I know it was even difficult for him to even talk about his brother, or even during the day of his transition. So just kind of talk about that situation for a minute.
Okay, you talked about earlier preseason conditioning.
Yeah.
Okay. A little background information. Our son transitioned when he was 19 years old. When he was 12, we found out that he had a heart condition. So, as a man, I played ball in school, then I got in the band. I'm always conditioning myself for what's ahead. I'm looking ahead. So I'm like, okay, gotta be strong, because, gotta be strong for the family. So as the years go on, his condition progresses, it actually debilitates more. Mm-hmm. And initially congestive heart failure. So we're like, okay, that's treatable with medication. Then it goes to the point where he's gonna have to have a heart. Then he starts getting ICDs, defibrillators. Then he has this device called an LVAD, left ventricle assist device. What that is, that's a bridge before a heart transplant. So when he passed, he had the LVAD, and he had went into the hospital. Like I said, I'm going to give you some background information. Don't want to ramble, but you've got to hear where it's been to see where we're going with it. We owned a restaurant, and all of us worked there. My wife, Regina, my son, Anthony Jr., who was on the team for Coach Law, my daughter, Rachel. Restaurant was called Rachel's Burger Shack, and our son, Raphael, and my brother, we all worked in the restaurant together. So we've got 3 cars that are working. Let me tell you how God works. God is the author of everything in the world.
Yes, he is.
He knew what he was about to do. And what he did, for some reason, every car that we had broke down. He went to the hospital July 28th of 2008. We got him up there. The last time that I saw him, my wife, was when we got him into the hospital. I will tell you, that whole week, like I said, we went back, opened a restaurant. Cars, my car broke down. My wife's car broke down. My son's car. We had one car, that was his car, so we had to split between the restaurant, school, them doing practice, and just different things. Couldn't connect enough time for somebody to relieve us to go visit him. And I say that was God, preparing us, distancing us, because, we knew about the condition, and every time we would, we'd talk every day. Hey, how you doing? Talk for hours, my wife especially, because women, for you guys, y'all are wired differently than we are. You've carried this child all this time. This child has been a part of you more intimately than us. Not saying that we don't love them as much, but the connection you have is a whole lot deeper. So, like I say, my wife was talking to him more. I'm of the mindset, okay, this is just another thing. He's going to go up here. He's going to have this procedure. He's back at home. And I'm like, then he'll be back at work, having fun. So going back to it, he's up there. We can't get there. Doctors, we check with the doctors. Well, he's doing good. He's not going to have a procedure because we don't see infection now. Next couple of days, well, it's back. It was kind of like a, emotional roller coaster for us.
Wow.
He's okay. He's not okay. He's okay. He's not okay. So the day that he transitioned, never forget, the day before, I said, you know what, I'm shutting the restaurant down. I don't care. I put signs up, I'm shutting it down. We're going up here. We're gonna be there for his procedure. It's supposed to be on Thursday morning at like 8 a.m. Why doesn't he just go ahead and, they get it done and everything be back to normal? We were getting ourselves out of the car and the phone rings. And my wife answers the phone because I hate phones. I just don't like talking on the phone. And one of the caseworkers says, something's going on with Raphael. Well, first of all, she said, y'all here, y'all on your way? We're like, yeah, we just arrived. She said, well, something's going on with him. We grabbed what we got and we just start running. Two older people running that aren't in shape to run, but we just started running. And that was, God gave us strength to get there. And when we get to the floor, we see people standing outside the room. I'm like, okay, something's going, obviously at that point, antenna goes up, something's wrong. We get there and they say, well, before he was going to get ready to go down to surgery, we went in the room to check on him and we didn't have any, he was, passed out. I was like, that's kind of odd, because we've been kind of in contact throughout the day. They're like, yeah, it is odd because he got up this morning and he was a normal Raphael. He was very joyful. He was pretty much like the life of wherever he was. They said he got up this morning, he went into a lady's room, I think her name was Miss Steele. He got up, he went and had prayer with her. It was another person that didn't want to get that procedure, the LVAD device. He went in and he talked to him. He walked around with some people. He was he'd go in if he saw somebody that was having a bad day. His condition wasn't important to him. No matter how bad he was doing, If you didn't know he had that condition, you wouldn't know. He was more concerned. If he walked in this room right now, he would want to know how all of us are doing before anything. He always said, if I can't be who I was, let me go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be a burden to anybody. You can't live your full life worrying about me. So at that point, I look, my wife, I mean, she's, she's pretty much speechless and frantic at the same time, and I'm shocked, and I'm, and I'm like, what do we do? And she, obviously she's not going to make a decision. And I was like, I was like, just, okay, stop working on him. And when I said that, it's just like the life went out of me. Like the life completely went out of me. And I didn't, here comes the part about being a strong man. Didn't break down. But what I did do, I had a fit with God.
Yes.
I had a fit with God.
Mm-hmm.
I yelled.
Mm-hmm.
I cursed.
Yes.
I questioned him.
Yes.
How can you do this to my son, my son, he was 19 years old, but he loved God so much.
Right.
He wore big chains. He was kind of flashy. He had a chain that had the Last Supper on it, a big pendant.
Wow.
And his preacher, in his eulogy at the funeral said, when I first met him, I was like, Raphael, why you got all these big chains on? He said, well, you see the one that says the Lord's Supper? He said, yeah. He said, what I do, I use that to talk about Jesus to people.
Yeah.
I start conversation with that. So, and I'm like, playing it back, I'm like, God, how can this guy live for you?
Yeah.
And you got people doing everything under the sun.
Yeah.
But how can you take my son? I mean, I can't, and I had a fit for about 10 minutes or so. And then I said, something, came over and I said, Lord, your will, not mine.
That's right.
And I kind of, at that point, I put it away because, okay, I got to be strong for everybody else. My wife, my kids, the whole family, because he was the life of the family. What nobody knew was the loneliest time for me was that drive home. That drive home. And all the emotions are coming out. And that's my time, to talk to God and still questioning, but knowing that it's his will. And got to be together when I walk in that door, if they're up. Nobody can see Anthony cry. Nobody can see Anthony grieve. And trying to be the strong person is really not good for you.
It's not.
It's not good. Like she said, it's time for you just didn't want to talk to people. And for me in the industry, I'm still in the customer service industry. I was just such a joyful person around people, jovial, life of the, wherever I was at. But in my private time, it was hard. I'm questioning, what if we had done this differently? What if I had done this? Why did we, why not I initially just shut the restaurant down and go? But again, that was God's planning on that, because who has every vehicle except one break down, and you can't you can't make time to get there. My wife we had it where my wife could get up there, but we could never get nobody was able to take her up there, and that was all God, because he was, preparing us a little bit more for the situation, because like I said, I was like, okay, this day could come. For them, that day never crossed their mind that day would happen. I prayed that it never would, but obviously it did. And one thing, he's going to talk about faith later, and I know I've just been rambling, but I have to say it. One of my favorite verses is Job 13:15. Though you slay me, yet I trust you. And that resonates to this day for me, because I had to really trust him, and I do it on a daily basis to get back. She talked about milestones, holidays. His birthday, guess what? Christmas Eve.
Wow.
Christmas Eve is his birthday. So we deal with that. In the beginning, it was kind of like you wanted to cancel Christmas. You want to cancel every holiday. You don't want to deal with anything. It's been 11 years now. Things are we healed? No, because it's an ongoing healing process.
Yes,
But,
definitely.
the cliche people say we are in a better space because,
They've never been in that
Yeah.
space.
They've never been in that space.
You know,
Yeah.
Never been in
Right.
that
Never
space.
been in that space.
Right.
Experienced it, never been in that space.